Hello everybody and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 325, actually 325 this time. We actually didn't notice in the last episode that we got it wrong.
That's my
because
bad.
yeah, well it's both of our bads, to be honest. I was like, I don't have a folder for that, therefore it must not exist, forgetting that I had asked Bally to edit the previous episode and therefore it had not appeared in my computer. So here we are back on track to keep things going. 325, that's a quarter of the way to 400, so we're getting there.
Can I take a swing on a prediction?
What is this prediction related to, Bally?
It's not a prediction. Prediction's the wrong word. A swing on the state of play. Are you recording this episode in your pants?
Bally, I am in fact recording this episode in my pants, but there's obviously big reason for that. That's
what gave me inclination to ask. You see,
we have discussed in the past, like one of these days I'm going to record an episode naked. It might still happen. It might have already happened. Who's to say? But by the end of 2026, the listeners must remember that NBZ will have recorded a podcast episode naked, and it's up to you, detectives out there, to have told us when that was. So, I am in fact in my pants. I actually, here's the hack I have for you. If you live in the United Kingdom, which many of our listeners do, and you are experiencing...
Put your pants in the freezer then.
Put your pants in the freezer, take them out before you podcast, and you'll have a great time. I have a towel over my neck. Basically, my mum was doing this thing where she got a towel and wet it under the sink, and then just hang it over her neck, and I was like, that sounds like a good idea. And so I started doing that, and so I have a wet towel around my neck that I will periodically go and put under the tap again and make colder. And then even further hack, I put that in the fridge. I left it in the fridge for about 10 minutes and then took it out, and I was like, oh, this is perfect, this is amazing. So we are going through maybe the worst heat wave that the United Kingdom has ever faced. It's fucking hell in here.
The UK has officially beaten the temperature record for June 3 days in a row on 3 back-to-back days, Wednesday, Thursday, and we're recording this on Friday, June 26th. So
is today actually higher than the last 2 days?
Yes. It might not be where you specifically were, but it's somewhere in England. I think in Hampshire or Surrey or something.
Right.
It was, they broke it again.
A certain place, yeah exactly. It's been fucking terrible. I bought a fan, obviously, because I'm like, well, summer's coming, I need a fan to keep cool. And, there's nothing like a fan blowing warm air at you, which is basically what's happening most of the time. It's really fucking bad. Turns out that we're burning the world down, and this is what we get as a result. And unfortunately, given the current political climate, don't think it's going to get any fucking better anytime soon. So,
move to Scotland. It's great up here. The advantage up here is... it's really cool. The downside is we're out of the World Cup. So you win some, you lose some. You win some.
You win some, you lose some. Obviously everyone was very, very happy about the fact that Scotland were in there and that they existed, which they haven't done in a very long time. But alas, when Brazil is in your group, I guess that's a bit of a reality check, maybe. So not great, but... there's all sorts of winners and losers out here. I went to a cricket match the other day, and it was England. It was women's England versus West Indies, and obviously my family were supporting West Indies because they hate England for some reason, which is probably comes from the Scottishness, and Bally also would do the same.
Of course.
But Windies did in fact lose too, because women's England apparently like one of the best in the world at cricket. I think that probably makes a lot of sense as to why it was 2020, so T20. So, that was good. But it was also one of the fucking hottest days of the year. So sitting outside trying to be cool when that was happening was not.
Were you in the shade or the sun?
Thankfully in the shade.
Okay.
Didn't help tremendously, but it was better than nothing.
All these temperature readings that everyone gets from everywhere, they're always taken in the shade. So it's actually like a kind of minimum temperature. Plus humidity can make the fuel factor way higher as well. So way worse.
Yeah, we were talking about this beforehand, but my favorite thing is going on to social media platforms and seeing all the Americans who are living in the UK being like, fuck guys, you were right, it's real bad out here, I didn't realize, and I feel like I've seen that over the years, or the last couple of years it's definitely happened a lot more, but this year all I'm seeing is Australians, Americans, they're all like, fuck man, it's bad in the UK. So if any of you motherfuckers out there in America are like, me, Bally and MBZ are whining about it being a little bit hot, get a fuck is what I say to you. All right, come over here and try and deal with it. Jesus Christ.
He says in his pants with his water towel around his neck.
Yep, my cold towel. So, anyway, we're here to talk about video games. It's a hobby, it's a lifestyle, it's a thing that's quite hard to do if you want to play on a computer, let's say, which I have not been doing recently because it just kicks out heat and makes everything even more hot, which is not good. So, yeah, we're here to talk about Nintendo. Bally, do you want to tell fine folks at home what today's podcast is going to be about?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing, and for the second segment, we're going to do some emails.
Indeed, we are. So, let's kick things off with a new video game. Can you believe it? On the Nintendo Switch 2 family of systems. I say family of systems as if they've added anything to it at this point in time, but they probably will, and it'll probably be extremely expensive.
They've reduced the size of their family. It's like, it used to be like the 3DS and the Wii U, and now it's just like, just the Switch. Just the Switch
Nintendo
2
Switch family.
Precise, yeah.
I guess if you say the Nintendo Switch family of systems, do you think the Switch 2 counts under Nintendo's brand rules of the family of systems? Like, where does the family of systems go to?
That's the sort of question I reckon there's not a single person in NOA knows the answer to. That I reckon NCL in Japan just haven't worked out the answer to either yet.
I bet you that they have it written down in a Bible somewhere, but only like 3 people know the answer. Yeah. And it's the kind of question that only us on this show would ask. Is like, how do they define the family of systems? Anyway, the new video game came out on the Nintendo Switch 2. It is called The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales. Now, we have discussed this previously in its demo form that I checked out a few episodes ago. And having played that demo, I was very into this game. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Played the whole demo through, which was about 4 hours long. And it kind of leaves not on a cliffhanger necessarily, but at a place where it's like, okay, this feels like the end to the prologue of the game, the opening. It's when it starts kind of opening up into more of what the game is going to end up being, which is, I guess, to some degree, a time travel story, which of course Bally immediately hears that and just tunes out because he's not a fan of it.
Hey, there are exceptions. I think Chrono Trigger is a great story. I think you can use time travel in the right way.
Yeah, I don't know that you'd be convinced by Elliot's use of time travel necessarily. I think it's interesting. So basically, the way this world is built is quite cool because you have essentially like a world map that when you zoom out of it, it kind of feels like the size of like the Link to the Past in terms of the space that you're inhabiting. There is a town that's like by the...
That's wild for like a 40-hour game, but okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, so there's a town by... And 40 hours, I'm unconvinced that's how long it is, but we'll get to that. There's a town in like the bottom right-hand corner, and then you have areas you can go to, and you can explore, and you can open up new routes, and there's like, there's an ice area above, and there's like a desert down onto the bottom left, and there's, other tropical locations, whatever, places that you can go to. When you go into the past, it is the same map, with some changes. So like the town obviously changes drastically based on what era you're in. So, I've gone back to the era of magic, which is when the town is flourishing and there's loads of stuff happening. But then the one in the middle is the age of reconstruction where the town is like kind of derelict and, all the magic is gone and now, not many people live there anymore and they're trying to kind of build it up, essentially. So there's different states that the world is in. But generally speaking, I find that the locations are actually not that different, and I will find myself going through a cave and going to the other side and be like, I already did that cave in another place, did I do it here or not? And then looking at the map and be like, oh no, I actually haven't been to this place in this version of the map yet, and it doesn't feel particularly different. There's dungeon areas you can go into. So the game is, at a base level, just to explain it to people who don't really know or haven't heard of it, it's kind of Square Enix's take on a Zelda game to some degree. There's a bit of Ys in there, there's a little bit of RPG in there, but ultimately it is a kind of top-down, action-adventure game where you're running around this world, fighting enemies with real-time combat, using items and weapons to do that, but it doesn't really have, like, gating in the way that a Zelda does. It's not like, oh, you need to have this item to unlock this area. There's a little bit of that of like, oh, if I get bombs, then I can bomb this place and go through it. But it's not structured in the same way that traditional Zelda dungeons are structured. So there are lots of optional dungeons you can go to, and you can go inside them, and sometimes you'll enter into it and you'll be like, oh, I actually can't do anything here, and you have to then go into a different kind of era, and that's where that dungeon is basically available. And I think one of the things that's slightly disappointing about Elliot is that I hoped that the time travel stuff would have a bit more impact on the world. So, if you were to, let's say, I think Oracle of Ages is probably a good example here, right? As kind of almost direct analog, where in that game, there are dungeons where you have to go through it, and then you have to go and change the time, and then something will change in the dungeon. And it's like part of the puzzle-solving element of the dungeon is that back and forth through time. And in Elliot, there are dungeons you go to, and you'll do the whole dungeon in one area, and then you'll be like, oh, I wonder if that changed anything in another, place, another era. And you go back there, and no, nothing's changed. And there's nothing different about it necessarily. It hasn't had an impact. And there's like maybe some treasure chests you can find there in that version of it. But sometimes it will just be like fully locked off because you just don't have, they basically don't want you to progress within that space because they've built the dungeon for that one era and you aren't really supposed to be entering it in the other one. So yeah, I think that's interesting, and it's an interesting design choice, but it does make the game feel quite repetitive in a way, in the sense that you are going to all these different places multiple times over without much having changed. And so that scope of the world that did feel relatively small, I was like, well, it's fine because it means that every era you go to will be totally different and it'll have different things you can do in each spot. Isn't really the case. And yeah, I have definitely been enjoying it. I think I've enjoyed it less than I did during the demo. And I think because the demo presents you with so many things that feel quite fresh and interesting to begin with. And then it kind of falls into a pattern, into kind of like, more humdrum experience that is not as exciting necessarily. So I'm probably total of about 10-ish hours in, if you're counting the demo. So I've not played a huge amount. But I think the thing that I said about Elliot before is I think overall it's very nice as an experience to play. Like, it's very cozy. I think it has great vibes. I think the music is excellent. Really, really like the soundtrack.
Does it ever break out of nice?
No, and I think that's the problem, is it never really does break out of nice. And it's nice kind of permanently. And that is nice, It's nice to be nice. And I think it is... it's comfortable, is what I'd call it, right? Like, it's a game that...
HD 2D is nice. It looks...
It is.
It makes everything nice. It's good.
It has just a very comforting vibe to it, and I think that's the thing that makes me like it. Even though it's not blowing my mind, it's not like, oh, wow, this is such an incredible puzzle I just solved, or like, oh, my goodness, that boss was crazy. Although the bosses have been quite cool so far. I have liked them. They have been a bit more like Zelda style in a way. There's a very cool one that I did recently with a giant frog, and, like, he's doing these moves you have to avoid out the way of, and all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, at a base level, like, the combat is relatively simplistic, and I have access to a bunch of weapons, but I'm just kind of leaning on the same ones because they're kind of doing the job. Like, I have a big hammer I could use, or I have like a long spear, but I'm just using the same sword from the beginning because I've kind of upgraded it a little bit, and then I've got a bow and arrow that I also have upgraded a little bit, and I don't really feel a need to change those up that much. I think also, so the system I talked about before, the Magicite, which is basically where you get these crystals and you can essentially create like gemstones out of them that have like abilities and capabilities to them. And the ones that I found to be the most useful are just kind of the most basic ones, which is like increase the amount of damage you do or increase your crit rate. And like there are some interesting ideas on there of things that you could put together, but ultimately it never really went in a direction that I thought it might, which is a bit more synergies, a bit more like, ooh, with this, then if I add this, then that kind of works in its favor. And it never kind of got to that place with it. So I found the combat, to be fine and engaging, but also ultimately a little brainless, and there's not much I'm thinking about when it comes to the like, I'm collecting Magicite, I'm getting money all the time, and I don't ever feel like I'm changing my loadout that frequently, or frequently enough to where, that system is that meaningful. I'm getting all this stuff, but I'm not changing it, and so, yeah, it feels like a game that has a really good kind of setup, and interesting ideas, but ultimately it isn't doing anything like wild or crazy with it. And I think that's okay.
I've heard criticism of the writing that it's kind of, if you argue that this team kind of, and I would make this argument as well, that I think they really improved their story writing and character dialogue quite considerably between, say, Octopath Traveler 1 and Octopath Traveler 2. A lot of people have said, with Elliot, they've kind of gone back to 1 a bit, like it's a bit more rote, maybe, whereas I'd argue Octopath Traveler 2, pretty good story, pretty good writing, compared to 1 at least.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I would argue even that some stuff in Octopath 1 is like really, really good. Like that first demo we ever played for Octopath 1, Primrose's story, was like really fucking good.
Yeah, really good.
So like I think this is definitely a tier below that.
Oh wow.
And
okay.
I'm personally not that bothered by it, because I think ultimately, you know, Zelda games have stories, you know. We like and enjoy them, but they're very simple, really, at the end of the day. They're not that complicated, and they do the job.
Just you wait, this Ocarina of Time remake, the story
here we
is
go.
gonna
Yeah,
hit you over the head.
It's going to blow everyone's mind. But yeah, I've never really come to Zelda games expecting story to be like a huge component of it. And so I wasn't like disappointed necessarily in this. I'm not someone who needs that as a thing to push me through. I did listen to Kind of Funny talk about it, and Greg Miller is someone who needs narrative, I think, to push him through a game, and if it isn't there, then it isn't something that he's interested in, and that's just never been the case for me. Like, I'm always gameplay first, mechanics first, and so if I am enjoying the kind of like moment to moment, story's fine. It's not something that I care too much about. I think it's really well voice acted. I think the character portraits look amazing. Like, just the artwork on display is absolutely fantastic. And I've kind of enjoyed the like smaller side stories more than the main story, I'll say. Like, there's been a couple of side missions that are a little bit more interesting narratively than what kind of the main path has going on. Because the main path feels, you know, pretty typical. Like, they talk to Elliot, and Elliot's like, I'm an adventurer, and that's basically all he says the whole time. Is like, he doesn't have much. He's pretty much a wet blanket of a person, right? There's nothing really that interesting about him. It's just like, I'm going to help you save your friend or whatever, you know? Like, that's the kind of guy that he is. And I think the more interesting story stuff comes from the other characters that surround him. I am a little disappointed because the demo has the princess who's kind of talking to you the whole time, right? Princess Huria. And after the demo, they swap that character for what many people would call an annoying companion, a Navi-like fairy who's called Faye, who actually does talk as opposed to Navi, who's just like, you know, doesn't have voice acting in Ocarina of Time. Navi might actually have voice acting in this remake, so
great! Oh my god, I never even thought
Navi sounds like. Yeah, let's be ready for that, because yeah, it could be a thing. But yeah, I think Faye is like fine, but like I far preferred the interactions that the princess had with Elliot, and I found that they lean into some more stereotypes with what happens with the princess that is a little annoying. And you end up just having this other companion character chatting at you the whole time. And I don't think, you know, the whole like chatting at you throughout the world has annoyed me that much, but I miss the interaction that I had previously, and I think it's not a rug pull necessarily, but I would have preferred the game build up that, you know, initial relationship that they have, as opposed to like throwing in a random fairy who's just kind of, you know, whatever, doesn't make things that interesting. But yeah, there's some cool stuff out there in terms of like, there was a side quest I did that did do what I was wanting, right? Which is like, you know, go back in time, change something, and then it has an effect, like, narratively on what's going on. It was like this guy who's in a bar, and he's like quite cold-hearted and like not very nice, and he asks you to go and like take down these like these kind of robots who are out there. And, you know, there's cool stuff of like going back in the past and being like, oh shit, in the age of magic, the robots that I'm fighting in the other ages are like, you know, created by that society essentially. And so it's like almost gameplay storytelling where you can tell that, you know, that society collapsed and crumbled, but all those robots were left there, and now they're just roaming the wild in the other ages, because they can't, you know, die because they're robotic, they're just mechanical, and so yeah, that I thought was pretty cool. But you go back through time and you like fight these robots in this place, and you find this guy, and this guy turns out to be like an ancestor of the guy who owns the bar, and you basically help him out and change his mind, and then his philosophy then carries down to this guy, so that when you travel back in time, that guy has now changed his attitude, and now he's like a much nicer person. person, basically. So that sort of storytelling is what I was kind of looking for a bit more overall from the game. And there's a little bit of it in the main story, but I think the side stories are definitely a bit better about that, generally speaking. As simple as they are, which, they are generally pretty light. But yeah, I think it's a good pick up and play game. I think it is very relaxing to the point where, and now this is obviously part of the fucking weather situation here also, but I got back yesterday and I had woken up early 2 days in a row because I woke up early for a PlayStation event on Wednesday, and then on Thursday I went into the office, and so I came back yesterday and I was sitting on the couch and I was like, I'm going to play some Elliot, sit here in my pants, of course, because it's too hot to be wearing anything. And I was playing Elliot and I just feel my eyes going. Partially the music and partially everything else and just relaxing me.
Yeah, how's the music?
And the music is really, really good. I think the overworld theme from the demo is still the best track.
Okay,
So I've not had anything surpass that yet. But yeah, there's some very good tracks in there, and it changes obviously based on the eras that you go to as well, and the dungeons and those types of things. But anyway, listening to the music, sitting on the couch, and I fell asleep for 2 hours on the couch yesterday. And then I woke up and I was like, fuck. I felt awful, as I always do after having unintended naps, which is why I hate them. And yeah, I needed the rest. But I'm not saying that to speak to Elliot putting me to sleep necessarily.
Elliot is just the game of the year, send you to sleep.
Yeah.
What more could you want?
But it is calming. I think that's kind of what I'm saying is it is so calming and chill.
I'm intrigued by this game. I might try and get to it because it's good vibes, HD 2D, good music. Don't need a killer story, but just beat to beat does sound pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely, you can up the difficulty if you want to, and that might make things more engaging for me, but I actually don't really care that much about that. I'm actually more here to just run around and explore. And I guess my biggest disappointment is the exploration side, because I was really enjoying that as part of the demo, and I think just because every area is just repeated throughout every age that you go to, and there's just not enough distinction between them, that's where the exploration just starts feeling less fresh than it could have done. And I think if they had had more time to craft each of these eras and make them all feel a bit more distinct and have their own dungeons and puzzles and stuff like that, Trigger. I think it would have felt so much better, because I think Chrono Trigger is a really good touch point here, because Chrono Trigger, every time you travel to a new version of the world, it feels significantly different, and they change everything about it, and I think Elliot doesn't have that, and I think that's a thing that I really would like to see them address if they were to do a sequel, is how do you make that exploration better, and how do you improve that aspect, because I really just like running around the world, but it just starts to get a little bit rote, and it got to a point where I was like, I don't really feel like there's any benefit, because ultimately the things I'm getting for exploring is money, which, what does that do? I guess I just invest it into either buying potions, or I expand out my Magicite box, a Magicite box which doesn't really need it that much expanding, because I already have a setup that I like, or I'm going and fighting enemies and getting Magicite and other stuff like that. There's a whole quest with cats as well, and you get rewards for finding cats in the world, and I could do all that, sure, to tick off a list, but ultimately, because it's not really helping me that much from a gameplay perspective, do I really want to go out and do that? So I am feeling at the moment a bit more mainliney about it, of I'll just go through the story and not worry about exploring every little nook and cranny of this world, which...
Well, there's not much benefit to exploring. That is a real... Exploring for the sake of exploring can work in games.
Yeah, and I think there's multiple reasons to explore in a game, right? And I think Breath of the Wild is the prime example of exploration done right, which is... every place you go to feels so distinct and unique and interesting, and you're surprised by the architecture and the geometry and all of it, but you're also getting rewarded with, items and weapons and all these sort of things. Shrines as well. You're rewarded constantly in that game for things you find.
Shrines.
I think Elliot bumps up against both of those things, which is the world feels a little copy and pasted between the different eras, and so exploration doesn't feel like, oh, I found something new, because it's just oh, this is that same place I've already been to. And then because I don't need these extra items and money and stuff, because the game is easy enough, it feels like the reward I'm getting is just like that feeling of getting a reward versus an actual thing that will help me necessarily. So yeah, I think it just bumps up against a few too many things, and I think there's ways in which a sequel to this could be really, really good, and they could really enhance it and build on it. But it does feel like a first attempt at a type of game, and it's solid for what it is. But yeah, it's not like blowing me away in kind of the way I maybe hoped it to. That said, I might like it more than Mina. I don't know. I'm like there's elements of like Mina that I loved and really enjoyed, but equally was frustrated by that game quite a lot. So I don't know. Elliot is definitely like Mina has much higher highs, but also much lower lows. Where Elliot is just like kind of a flat line the whole way through. You know, like if you think of Mina as like a very spiky graph, and Elliot is just like flatlining essentially. Like more consistent, but yeah, I don't know. Not as exciting, I guess, in certain ways. So interesting, these both coming out around the same time, because they're both in Zelda spaces, but doing quite different things, I would argue.
Definitely, yeah. And the dungeons are quite combat focused. There's not a ton of puzzle solving here.
Actually, I will say the dungeons do have a decent amount of puzzle solving, and I have enjoyed that. There was a dungeon I did with some mirror puzzles where you're moving mirrors around and rotating them and getting light to move through spaces, which I really enjoyed. There was one which is the classic fucking pushing an ice block, so obviously reminiscent of the Snow Peak Mana, as well as like many Pokemon games where you're pushing things around ice. So that was cool as well. I enjoyed like some ice pushing puzzles. So I think the dungeons actually are probably a bit more of a highlight of the game than I've maybe given them credit for. There's lots of there are kind of shrines in this game as well. There's like little areas you go to which are shrine-like, in which you do like either a little puzzle or a little combat challenge, and you get a heart piece at the end of it. And this is a 4 heart pieces to a heart game. So every shard that you get, you need to get 4 of them to get 1 extra heart, essentially. And so each of these little shrines you find is going to give you one of those, essentially. You also get powers for your fairy. So one of the ones I've really enjoyed, call you surprised when I say this, but it is a power that lets you run really, really fast. And so you press that on the L button, and your fairy gives you the ability to just like dash around super quickly, and so you can move through the world really fast. She can also turn on fire and like solve puzzles by like lighting up lanterns and making rooms not dark anymore. So there is puzzle solving with the fairy as well. Like there's some timing based puzzles where you have to use the speed move to get across a thing that would disappear otherwise if you weren't quick enough. So they are blending like some of those fairy powers alongside some more traditional just like figure it out in the dungeon puzzles to create stuff that is pretty engaging. So I think that stuff is probably one of the better parts of the game. I will say that like part of the frustration with exploration as well is that you will find optional dungeons out there, and you get to those and you'll be like, I don't know if I can do this or not. Basically, you'll go through it and you'll eventually hit a roadblock, and you'll be like, is this because I have to go to the same place in a different era? Which, given my experience so far, I think that's probably the case for most of these. But I was just a bit confused sometimes, because there's been this one place that I've gone to in multiple eras so far, and I've not been able to progress in any of them. So I guess I just have to wait until I unlock the 4th era, which I haven't done yet, in order to do that. So the optional dungeons, not as great, just because you never know if you can actually progress in them or not. But the mainline ones so far have been quite fun and engaging, and yeah, they blend together like kill rooms of enemies with just enemies around the place, with puzzles and a bit of platforming. This game has a jump button that I mentioned previously, and there is a good amount of platforming in the dungeon spaces of like, oh, get across this area, and they're moving platforms, you have to jump at the right time, and there's also some enemy attacks that you can jump out the way of as well, so there's a little bit of that in the boss fights also. So yeah, it's Elliot.
I said 40 hours earlier. I've just checked how long to beat, and it says mainlining is 16 hours, main plus extra is 24 and a half, and then completionist is 36 and a half. So
yes, I was going to say, so it's not that long. I checked a playthrough on YouTube to see where I was, and I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through, and I am about maybe 10 hours at most. So I'm probably going to finish it within 15. I wouldn't be surprised if I did anyway. Yeah. So, I think it's a nice tight package, and yeah, a solid. It's a nice video game. I realize nice is a really bad word to use, generally speaking, but I don't know if there's any better way to describe Elliot as I don't know, just pleasing, gentle, pleasing, calming. It's good time. So that's the Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. I will probably finish it by next time, and if I have any further thoughts, I'll give them. Otherwise, yeah, it's a good time. Bally, you have been playing the other Zelda game
yes.
that we have been a lot of people have been talking about, and I finished last time. Mina the Hollower. You have now finished Mina the Hollower.
I finished Mina the Hollower. Gonna give a few spoiler-free final impressions, but then we're gonna do a little bit of talking about full spoilers. So spoiler-free, I think this game's pretty awesome overall. I think that the more you play of this game, and the more I understood it, I felt like it felt less and less like a Zelda game, and I feel like it's all based around the customizability of the trinkets and the sidearms, and doing different combinations of those things. I feel like is kind of what the game is wanting you to do and try. And like, oh, you think this boss is too tough? Well, why don't you mix up your trinkets, go try a different sidearm, and have at it, have another go. And I think that once I found a build of what I liked the most in terms of trinkets and sidearms, that's when I felt this game was at its best and I was enjoying it the most. I do think this game kind of is a bit too wedded to some of the more old-fashioned things Zelda games do. Like we talked about the knockback. I don't mind knockback in and of itself, but this game is just in love with black pits. Like there are so many dark holes in this game to fall in, and right through to the end of the game, they just love throwing you down dark holes. And yes, there's a trinket to mitigate that slightly that I used a lot. But even by the end of the game, I just felt like they just love it way too much. Like this game would be a little bit stronger in my view if they just took out some of the more frustrating things. And I would argue that just the sheer number of black holes and the amount of platforming and slipping and sliding and falling in, like it just feels very old-fashioned in that sense. I know that's what they're going for, but like it doesn't make it any less frustrating. So like I think that's an important thing to say. But overall, I had a better time than you did with the final end game stuff, MBZ, and yeah, I think I finished the whole thing like 22 hours, and I felt like I was exploring and getting a decent amount of stuff, but turns out I only got like 49% of stuff collected, so not that much to be honest. And yeah, I think this game's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden stuff, I think, in terms of like there were areas that I was like, surely I need a different ability to do this. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is pairing trinkets with other things and then creating your route forward with sidearms and trinkets together to like there's a big gap like outside the castle somewhere, and I saw someone online being like, okay, so you combine this trinket with this sidearm and then you do this and then it lets you jump over this entire like massive gap that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And yeah, I think that's kind of their creativity in like the movement and stuff kind of comes from combining those things together, as opposed to giving you a more traditional, almost like Metroidvania style upgrade that would then let you do those things.
Yeah. They're like, this is quite RPG based, and we're going to have so many different collectibles and things. I think I got almost 30 trinkets, and there's 60 in the game or something. It's crazy.
There's
how
so
many
much
there
hidden
are.
stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can have up to like 6 trinket slots. So like that is the sheer variety of trinkets you can have in those 6 slots is insane. And I think that makes me feel like that's what they kind of want you to feel like. They want you to really experiment with those and try that. And the more I leaned into that, and the more like, this is not a game where I would argue most good Zeldas, if you're good at Zelda, you can play most of those games without taking any damage, like for the most part.
They're easy games, right?
I don't think that's the case with Mina. Like, I think this game is very much about, it's a kind of like, there's a lot of bosses I was taking down in a very Mega Man fashion, where it's about, I'm going to do more damage to you faster than you can do damage to me.
Right, just
that's
tanking hits in order to like just out damage you essentially.
Out damage them, exactly. It's like, yes, you're going to damage me, and that's okay, because it's more beneficial for me to hang out in this dangerous spot wailing on you with damage than it is for me to play conservatively and hang back. So I definitely leaned more into that with bosses. And yeah, I think I talked about how I struggled on the second boss last time. until I got to the final boss, I beat every single other boss in this game first time because like I had a setup, it felt good, and I just went with that. So
yeah, like, there really were only a couple that gave me trouble, and it was the final boss, but also the second boss that you did was the fourth boss I did, I believe. So yeah, we can get into that in more detail afterwards. But obviously, it's going to be a lot more challenging for you taking on a further on in the game area much earlier than you maybe were supposed to.
And maybe that's not a great thing about the game. Like, it doesn't. Is it good that you can just go and fight this boss that has exactly the same level as it would if you came to it at the start of the game versus the end of the game? Like, does level scaling work, or is that just, I don't know. I feel conflicted about that because it was cool. I went and did that second, but maybe I would have had a better experience if I had come to it later. I don't know, but like, I feel conflicted on that.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think they definitely have an intended order, and they do try and kind of funnel you towards that, but because the game is open, it doesn't necessarily mean that the player is going to go in exactly the direction you want them to. So yeah, I don't know if there's a really good way around it necessarily, aside from flattening the difficulty, which might just make the game less interesting as a result if you do that, because at some point, if you flatten the difficulty, it means that as you gain power, you're then making every subsequent area like even easier than it would have been otherwise. So yeah, not an easy problem to solve, but I think they kind of did the best that they could with the type of layout that they had. So yeah.
I really do give this game credit that I think when you combine the trinkets and the sidearms and the kind of soulsy system of all the money and upgrades and stuff, I think it does feel quite unique for what it's going for. And I really do like that about it. Like, I don't think this really feels like any other Zelda game I've played. And it's not strictly like a Souls game either. Obviously, there are huge Souls-like elements. But like, I think it's really cool for that. I think that there's a level of toughness and grit that they want you to have that I appreciate. I think that also the game is like this, thematically is dark in a way that I think leans into the difficulty, that they matches the kind of soulsy experience that I think is also quite unique for what they're going for. So yeah, I think it all came together really impressively. I was very happy overall.
Nice. Cool. Well, let's put a timestamp there, and if you want to stay, we're going to talk some spoilers, but otherwise you can skip ahead to the next segment. So let's get into some specifics, Bally, on Me the Hollower.
Yes.
As you mentioned before, you went to a spot that you maybe weren't supposed to go to. So what was your order of operations in terms of?
So my order was Crypt first, Bone Beach second, and then basically in the standard order after that. So Nox's Bayou, then Septemberg, then Coltrane Peak, then Astral Ori, and then the castle at the end.
Did you have to look up how to get to Astral Ori, or you accidentally kind of went into a mirror already, so you kind of knew that place existed?
I had 4 out of 5 mirrors before doing Astral Ori, and then when I...
Wow! So because you found the mirror so early, you then, whenever you saw a mirror, did the same thing, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I missed one of them, and I used a guide to find that one that I missed in the bayou, which is it's pretty out of the way, actually. I'd be surprised people who found that bayou one naturally.
So I didn't get any of them until the end, and had to go and find a guide to tell me where the fuck they all were, and had to retraverse. Like, doing Septemberg again...
Yeah, that's not much fun.
It's, like... I appreciate that they eventually give you fast travel with the train. Obviously, you have to save up for it, and you can't actually get to Coltrane Peak without having put 10,000 bones into the train. But that train just takes you to one spot, and for the Septemberg mirror, I literally had to go through the entire area of all the fucking fields and the pumpkins, and then through the section with the electricity and the lightning. Like, it's a long fucking area, and I had to do that whole thing to get all the way to the mirror, basically.
At least the guy's not chasing you.
Yes, that is the benefit, and to some degree,
that is a long time that guy is chasing you, and they even do the thing where you're in your base and he invades your base.
Oh my god, yeah!
That shit is so fun.
It's like the part of The Last of Us when you're at the workbench and you get attacked.
So good. Yeah. This is my safe zone. Not anymore. Run away.
Yeah, that was fucked. That was really nasty. So it was
tricky, but not crazy tricky. Which I think it was a good level of difficulty.
Yeah, I didn't find it too bad. I found him okay as like a threat throughout the level and chasing you. So.
But yeah, when someone reviewing this game had mentioned that there were tunic aspects into this game, so I knew there was tunic things going in, and so when I immediately saw mirror, I was like, right, I got to walk into that mirror, and sure enough, I walked through it, and that was very satisfying very early on in the game. So like, and if you look at like the way mirrors are laid out, like for example, the massive one in the castle, it's like, they want you to think about mirrors, like they're kind of dropping the hint, and then obviously they talk about mirrors in the newspaper later.
So you can click on it and you can look at the mirror, and I was like, there's definitely something up with this, because what's the reason for me looking at myself in the mirror and like you can move Mina's eyes about the screen, and I was like, is there some code of like I need to look at this corner then this corner or something to activate something, but I never really figured it out. And then at the end I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I get to this last place? And the guide was like, oh, walk through the mirrors, and I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then I realized that I hadn't done that across the game, and I was like, fuck, now I have to go and do every single thing. So I think, this game is a little grindy in the sense that if you don't know about the mirror stuff, then you then have to go back and do all of it, which is annoying. I think in-game without a guide is just like, it just feels frustrating.
Because you get to a point in the dungeon where there are literal blocks blocking your path that link to mirrors across the world. It's a little on the nose. Like it's not like a bonus thing. This is like a main part of the game.
It's a main part of the game, exactly. Yeah. And then the other part was just grinding for bones in order to get the train, because I hadn't been donating to the train because I'd rather give myself more defense and attack and whatever. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, I guess I have to do this now. But I did quite easily find a spot where I could do that. And then I actually sat there for like an hour just like grinding it, getting bones for my leveling up as well. Did you hit max level at the end of the game through all your stuff?
Yeah, I was near max level on most things before the final dungeon, and I purposely did a bit of grinding just for that final dungeon. Make sure, and I was there. I didn't do a ton of grinding overall, I'd say, but just intermittently, like when you're just short of a goal, it's just so much safer to grind a little bit, get over the line, and then if you die, it doesn't matter, so I did that a few times. I found there was a spot in Septemberg near the beginning where there's a save space and there's like a bunch of enemies like grouped around a fire, and you can just very quickly go and kill them all, collect a ton of bones. I think it was like 450 bones, and I could do that like once every 20 seconds or so, and so I was getting bones pretty fast. I was able to level myself up. Before the final dungeon, there are 2 guards just south of Osix that are 250 each, and they are right next to a thing, so it's 500 every pop, just boom boom boom.
Oh wow, okay, that's very, very helpful. I think so the part that I complained about last time, we actually got multiple people on the Discord also being like, that part was bullshit, which is the lead up to the final boss, where you have a room of 2 really annoying lion guards who take a lot of hits to kill and have a shield in front of them and are a pain in the ass. And then after you kill them, you then have a sequence of platforming things you have to do.
That was not good.
It's not fun, and you get to that part of the end where the orbs are coming at you, and you have one square platforms, and like you were saying, falling off, obviously you lose health, and I did not equip the trinket.
Did you have the trinket that saves you falling off a bit?
No, I didn't.
Oh, damn.
So that's
we need to talk about trinkets after this, but go for it.
So interestingly enough, Elliot has a trinket that stops you from taking damage when you fall in a pit as well, so even more comparison.
I mean, Mina's reduces it and makes you bounce a little bit. Like, it doesn't eliminate it.
No, Elliot just makes you take 0 damage from it, which is great. So,
but you can make 3 square jumps with Mina's ability with that trinket, because you jump 2 spaces. It gives you like a trampoline. You take a little bit of damage, and then you'll bounce one more space. So you can do like a 3.
Oh, so it doesn't. It gives you a trampoline. That's really interesting. Okay.
Yes, but you still take a bit of damage. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that people can use that for like certain platforming things as well.
That section is the worst part of the game. Like I said in the spoiler-free section, this game they just love the hellishness of falling in pits too much, and they just really go for it in this area, and it's just a miserable thing to do before the final boss. It wasn't absolutely horrendous, and you can cheese it a ton because it's an auto scroll level, so if you can just survive, you will be reset further than you were when you died, as it were. So you just got to hang in there and get there. So.
I think the worst part for me, and I think like if they had made this one change, I probably wouldn't have been as frustrated. It's the fact they make you fight the 2 fucking guards every time. That is the thing that pissed me off more than anything else, because that is like, when you want to get through a thing, you don't want to fight.
You can't walk past them.
You can't walk past them. You can't just run past them. In fact, it blocks you off. That pissed me the fuck off. And that's why I was like, fuck this game. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to fight these guys. They're so fucking annoying. And I'm losing health doing it, and it's frustrating, and it's not easy.
What was your setup then? Because I think my setup dealt with these guys really easily. So what was your setup with your sidearms and trinkets?
So I think this is probably why, again, I have found it more frustrating and annoying, because you saying you're swapping your trinkets all the time, I just didn't do that at all.
I swapped them to the point of what I liked, and then once I liked what I liked, I stuck with them for most.
Okay, I thought you were saying more that you were swapping it depending on the situation or the boss or whatever.
I did do that as well.
Okay.
I mixed it up a bit.
Because I never did any of that shit. I basically had, from the beginning, I had the one that revives you. I had the one that gives you 2 extra vials of health and then also heals you more.
I never had that one.
That one is the fucking most useful one in the game.
So you had 9 vials instead of 7?
Yeah, I had 9 vials, yeah.
I never had.
And I could also like heal myself even if I hadn't done like damage to enemies, basically.
Wow.
And then I had +1 attack and +1 defense. And then I can't remember the last one.
I think those aren't as good as you maybe think they are.
Well, I was wondering if they even made any fucking difference at all, because it seemed like when I was fighting the final boss, it did like barely any.
I mean, they do, but I just think there are other trinkets that will give you far more benefit than simply having one more level,
power.
Is what I mean.
Yeah,
more power or more
I was
defense.
just like, and I think this is what pissed me off the most, and I discussed this last time, is like, I am max level and I have +1 on attack and defense, and I'm still like struggling horribly against the final boss, and like that should not be how like I think this is the problem with it kind of wanting to be an RPG but not actually being one, is like
they want you to swap in some broken ass trinkets to, you know, that's what they want.
I guess, but
you need to hear my trinkets before you make a judgment.
Yeah, I just want to finish this point. It was, like,
yes,
I think that with the Soul's influence and all that sort of stuff, Elden Ring is a challenging game. However, you can level yourself to level 9999999, and then you won't have trouble. Like, RPGs are defined by the ability to out level the challenge curve by going and doing stuff. And Mina has a max level. And so you would think by hitting max level, you would then be able to not have... And I'm not asking them to let me, like, kill the final boss in 2 hits. No, of course not. But, like, at least make it feel like it was worth my time getting all of that stuff leveled up, only to get there and be like, oh, no, it doesn't really fucking matter that you're max level. This is going to be hard anyway.
I mean, it'll make you, like, 7% stronger, perhaps. But that's it.
Yeah, but it's barely anything. And you just don't feel it. And I think that is really disappointing from my perspective.
I do actually think this game might have been stronger if they leaned further away from the leveling up and more into the trinkets. Because that's clearly what they wanted to do. But the leveling system is important because you need that power. Yeah. But you can't. The difference between this and Elden Ring is I think you can rely on your level 99 power a lot more in an Elden Ring than you can in Mina.
Yes.
Like, I think if you go in, say you could reach an approximate level 15 in Mina the Hollower and you had no trinkets, I think you would still struggle with that final boss. Like, I think the game really leans into like okay, but how are you going to recover? How are you going to heal? How are you going to do extra damage? There's all these other aspects that I think the game is trying to lean on.
Right.
Any more trinkets you wanted to talk through for your main setup?
That I didn't. Again, I think you could tell.
Did you have 6, by the way?
I had 6. I want to say 6, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have 2 sidearms?
No, because I never got that.
That's another.
That thing.
That's another big thing.
Well, no, it's not. I'm gonna disagree there again, because fucking sidearms shit. This is another old school game design bullshit thing of like, okay, you died, well, you lost your sidearm and also all the fucking currency you need to use it. And so, okay, well, before a boss, I then have to get a sidearm from like one of the orbs that is like rotating. But then if I want to get any currency to even fucking use the sidearm, I then have to grind all the candles or whatever in the room just to get enough juice so that I can then use the sidearm. Unless, of course, you then upgrade your room to give you like the infinite juice thing, which I never ended up doing.
It's not like, infinite. It charges over time.
Oh, okay. I thought it gave you not infinite, but it just topped you up in terms of your. amount.
It tops you
sidearm
up, but
juice.
it can run out. If you face a boss and come back to it quickly, it won't always top you full.
Wow,
Like,
well,
it
fuck
needs-
that even more then, because I thought it was actually... Okay, well, yeah, this game...
But I think the game wants you to upgrade your base to have all these things
Yes.
to take on big bads.
To some
Like, so
degree.
I'll talk through my setup because I think it made a huge difference. I had 2 sidearms, got that upgrade. So I had like this little guy that attacks on a chain, like a chain chomp.
Yeah, I remember
So the advantage of him is he auto attacks. So I can have him going at the same time as having my main axe sidearm that I used a lot. So it's a big axe. The trajectory is big, long, and slow, and it does like a little cross in the ground when it lands. And
It's the
does
Castlevania axe,
hella
but
damage.
top down.
It's the
instead of-
Castlevania axe, and I think that axe was really awesome. So my main trinkets were revive. I had this thing that does a random thunderbolt when you attack an enemy occasionally, and it will also occasionally attack an enemy with a thunderbolt when you are hit and take damage. So
Okay, it's a little bit like the Hades boon, the Zeus one.
Yeah, it did hella damage. It was so good. I had a little fairy like wisp thing that gives me life back every time I get hit. It'll just go like bleep, 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 and gradually give me life back. So that was a really good one. I obviously had double speed heal. Did you ever get double speed heal?
No, I didn't.
It allows you to use your healing flask or whatever much faster. And I don't think you can be interrupted when you are using them as well. So that was
Oh,
huge.
wow, that's really good, yeah.
I used the one to take less damage when you bounce off holes. I explained that before. I didn't use that for boss fights. I took that off.
Right, because you
don't
can
need it in
take that
most
off
of them.
and have a much better
Yeah.
combat-specific one.
Exactly. And then this was a really clutch one. This one that allowed me to gain extra plasma. So I could go beyond 100% plasma. So my yellow bar would go beyond my health. It would form an extra bar along the bottom. And then when I took damage and would heal back, I'd always go back to 100% almost all the time. It was absolutely clutch. I think that one is maybe the most powerful thing in the game, genuinely.
I never felt... I don't know why. It never really felt like it was that useful to me. I had it and I used it, but...
for me, like I'm saying, if I combine it with the little wisp that gives me health back and then combine it with the fast double heal, like I
Right.
think those three reinforce each other quite nicely.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then finally I had like this shrieking turnip thing that would
Oh,
damage
like from the level
enemies.
where you have the,
Exactly.
the fucking guy chasing you?
It would damage enemies every time I was struck. So if you imagine me like on a big boss fight, like the final boss, I've got my chain chomp on a chain. He's doing damage. I'm throwing axes. It's doing damage. I've obviously got my sword. I'm randomly attacking with thunderbolts. And then every time I'm getting hit, I'm doing extra damage with the turnip dude. So like it's just stacking.
And the Thunderbolt sometimes, I guess.
And the thunderbolt, like I was saying. Like so it's stacking. And then I've got my three trinkets that all boost my health. So I've got like my double speed heal, I've got my extra plasma, and then I've got my little wisp who will like heal me up if I stand near him. So like all these things combined, I think I did the final boss in maybe like 7 or 8 attempts. And I just think that like, yes, this game is really hard, but I think they just really wanted to lean into like these combinations. And I felt like I was very satisfied.
How was your breakdown between the first final boss and the second final boss? Because there's obviously a phase change that happens in the middle.
I think I did the second final boss first or second time. I can't
Oh,
remember.
wow, okay.
Yeah.
Because that guy felt, when I was fighting him, he felt like his health bar was fucking endless. But again, by that point, I was super checked out, and I was like infinite health, and like, I don't really care, I just die, and he wasn't dying quick enough, and it was annoying me, so...
I think it's long, but I think his attacks are fairly easy to avoid. I'm interested in... I'm interested what Matt said to you about, like... What was the secret thing in the boss that helps?
I think,
or
yeah,
whatever.
you said there was like a claw you could break or something, and then that did a bunch of
In
damage.
the second phase.
Maybe second phase, yeah, may have been. I
Yeah,
can't
so
remember.
there's you can crawl up its arm. You can like you can hollow into it.
Oh,
and
wow,
up the
okay.
arm. It's got the like it's got the hollower slit like on its hand that you know you can jump in kind of thing.
Oh, that's
So, yeah.
interesting. Okay, that is cool. I do like that.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't paying attention to any of this shit because I was so fucking done.
It's hard to convince you, but I'm trying to make the argument that like I think this game is very trinket based, and I think that's how they want you to take on the final boss. But yeah, and I appreciated that. I thought it was good.
And I think you're right. I think you're totally you are definitely correct. I was just I wanted to be done with the video game, and the video game wasn't letting me be done with it, and so I would just got annoyed, basically. So, you know, it's definitely on me more so than anything else, but I think if I had a bit more patience, or like, wanted to, because I was basically trying to finish it that day, and so whenever you're putting time pressure on yourself, you're always going to be like annoyed with something, and so not the game's fault necessarily, more the circumstance and me wanting to be over it essentially. So,
and I definitely think like once you're trinketed up and you've got that power curve going, I think the game is very satisfying where you can really stomp on a lot of bosses and you can actually get through some of the pseudo dungeons quite quickly. Like I think the final half of the game was so much faster than the first half, where I was like, am I going to be playing this game for like 40 hours is what I thought after beating that second dungeon, and I was nowhere near that obviously. So yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's quite a strange game in many ways, but and I think the way that, for example, you pick up sidearms and then go back to locations to get them is just so fucked. Like that's just a horror. There should be a chest in your base where you can just access
get
all
whatever
the sidearms
you want.
that you have. Now I kept my chain chomp on a chain and my axe constantly in the two terminals, so if I ever lost one I could always gain it back no matter where I was, but I might have liked to have a third sidearm that I could easily access, and I simply couldn't do that because I had these two spots I could kind of permanently use, and that was that. Can I briefly talk about the weapons? I did not switch from the sword like once. The game does this.
I am really curious about these people who are swapping weapons all the time, because I like why would I do that? Like, I'm so locked in. Also, you just learn the rhythm of the game through the type of weapon that you have.
I've learned the rhythm of the sword.
Yeah.
For a game that is so based on spacing and knockback and that game feel, there was no way I was ever going to be able to switch from the sword, honestly. Like, it's built into you. I
do think it's interesting in that way, because it does mean that if you do want to replay it, you can kind of lock into a totally different weapon and have a quite different experience with it. So, but unfortunately, it means that...
I guess that the game's leaning into that with all the trinkets.
Yeah, I guess in New Game Plus, you can do that with the fourth and fifth weapon, because you can only have 3 from the beginning, right? And so if you wanted to start with, like, the shield, for example, then you would have to, wait until that became accessible to you. But... yeah, I think the other thing that I thought was quite cool about the ending was like the very Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion-y kind of the way in which the giant bat, whatever his name is, the guy who turns into the bat, who comes and
Thorn.
he basically does a baby Metroid where he comes and protects you at the end against
really
the big bad, which I thought was quite cool, and nice to get a little nod to Metroid in there, which I thought was quite nice.
And I think the story's not incredible, but I think it's nice. Like, I think the idea that Lionel's this actual dastardly bastard, and like it's all the propaganda that like of this world, and I love the ending that like by the end no one thinks that Mina is a hero. Like they've all bought Lionel's propaganda, and Mina's ostracized and goes off on the island with Thorn. Like that's a cool ending. Like I think it's
very realistic,
bit different
based on our current world conditions.
Do you know about the secret ending?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this because I did look it up. When I saw that ending, I was like, surely that's not the true ending to the game. And
that's what I thought.
It kind of is the true ending to the game. It's only the fact that you can have a secret ending, which is really fucking hard to get because
it's complete bullshit to get that secret ending,
because you basically have to play the game without doing any negative things that he calls you out. So you get to the end of the game and you're in the palace with all these people around the dinner table, and Lionel is like,
good scene, like a good moment.
Yeah, and he's like, Mina, you did this and you did that, and you can actually keep clicking and be like, because I just went through the whole thing. I was like, yeah, tell me more, tell me what other shit that I did that you don't like, and he went through a list of must have been 40 different things across the game that I had done as a character and made decisions about, which I never really thought about in the moment. And some of them are just like, well, I was doing a side quest, so that just naturally happened, But he basically excoriates you for doing all these things and, being untrustworthy, etc., etc. And to get the secret ending, you have to do literally none of those, which is so fucking hard, because some of them are just like, I just do that as a course of playing the game type of thing, and it's like, wow. Whoever figured that out is a fucking mad person, because you have to play the entire game and get to the end having not triggered any of these potential pitfalls.
I'm sure the game doesn't even tell you when you do trigger one anyway. No. You have to realize you've done it, and then be like, oh, right, okay, restart.
And be like, oh, I have to restart the whole game again. Like, oh, God, that is... Very, very rough. But I mean, that's why it exists for the sickos out there, and we can just go on YouTube and watch a video about it instead. We don't have to actually, take it on. So yeah, that's cool. I'm glad they have some kind of like fun additional thing out there. And there's probably a bunch of other secrets in here. It feels like the sort of game where they've hidden loads of stuff that people will be finding over the course of this year and the future.
I want to give a big shout out to Osix. I think as a central hub town, it felt bustling. It felt like there was a lot to do. It felt like every time I was there and with money, I could spend it on things that made me stronger and feel better about the game. I loved the way that like the newspapers and the whole like chatter and all the propaganda and like suggestions on where to go next, and you can see like playtime and stuff. And I think all of that stuff is done really well. And I think Yacht Club deserve a lot of credit for just like making it is a cohesive world, and I like the world. One thing I really dislike about the world is, you can be anything. You can be any animal, and if you don't want to be an animal, you can just be a person.
Right.
Like it's like, right, so are we anthropomorphic animals, or are we people, or we're both? And it's that felt just a little bit like, let's just throw everything at.
Yeah, not much consistency though. Just like, I had an idea today to draw this toad with a top hat, so he's going in.
Yeah, so he's a character in the game.
And then there's just this old lady, just regular human old lady next to him or whatever. Yeah, it is a bit of a smorgasbord, but I don't really personally mind that stuff too much. I don't. Yeah, I feel like there is definitely a world they have built here, but that's not really the reason I'm playing a game called Mina the Holloways. I'm more out there to like hit bushes and find secrets and that sort of thing. So
yes,
yeah, I think it's a nice little cherry on top. But I don't know how much they thought about it necessarily. I'm sure they did. I'm sure all these games have so much thought put into their worlds and all this sort of stuff. So there's probably a lore bible that explains all of it. But for me, it's not. It's very low down the list.
How early on did you know that Lionel was going to be the final boss?
Basically immediately. Like
I know.
It's like. It's so obvious, yeah. I think that's fine. Again, it's not like story is not the reason that a game like this connects with people necessarily. I think it does a decent-ish job, but I think it's well written. But I don't think that's ever why people care about these types of things. So yeah, I thought it was fine, and I liked his character design at least. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anything else? Any other bits and pieces that stood out to you?
I've gone through everything on my list. I think it feels very weird that we have both now played Mina the Hollower, like this game that we have been aware of for quite a long time.
Yeah,
It's like it's like beating the Haunted Chocolatier. It's kind of in that realm of this game has been talked about a really long time, and I hope Yacht Club have done enough to be successful with this game and keep going and do something different or a sequel. I don't know if I want that necessarily, but like
3D Shovel Knight supposedly on the books.
3D Shovel Knight.
So.
I think 3D Shovel Knight is a very hard fantasy to realize and do well in. I think that's good luck if they want to do that, but like I don't know, Mina feels more their wheelhouse perhaps.
Yeah, especially because they've not done 3D before, right? And it's totally new, and it's also a question of like Shovel Knight is very much leaning on, NES style platformers, Mega Man most of all, and then obviously some Zelda 2 and DuckTales in there as well. But like, what direction do they go for the N64 platformer? Because there is the world in which they go the Banjo-Kazooie route as opposed to the Mario 64 route, and there's definitely some differences. I guess DK64 is a better comparison point of like the collectathon versus the more curated 3D platformer, and I do hope they go more down the Mario 64 route than the DK64 route, because
but you used to say they don't go for like Ocarina of Time or something.
I mean, that is an interesting proposal. I think the reason it wouldn't work in my brain is because Shovel Knight is a side-scrolling platformer, and platforming is like the key verb there, and so I would imagine
Link platforms when he side scrolls as well.
Yeah, I mean, trying to think, what is there another? I guess Link Between Worlds is the only other game where he's side scrolling aside from Zelda 2.
I meant Zelda 2, but yeah,
right. I guess there is also the underground areas in the Game Boy games where he does do that, but then you have to equip the Rock's Feather to jump in those as well, so
of course
that's a whole whole other factor. But yeah, I do think that 3D Shovel Knight to me says platformer more so than adventure. Like maybe if they do Mina the Hollow 3D, that would make a lot more sense in an Ocarina of Time mold. But yeah, I think platforming is definitely what I expect from them next. Having now finished Mina, what are your feelings on Shovel Knight versus Mina the Hollower? Do you have a preference of and yeah, do you think one's better than the other?
I think Mina is better than Shovel Knight. However, I think the timing with which Mina has come out versus Shovel Knight is far more impactful when it came out.
Correct.
Like it was like, man, there are not many indie games hitting it out of the park as much as this in terms of how they feel, the music, the impact, like the graphics, like were not a million games had done that graphical style.
Right, it
back
felt
then,
quite fresh and unique.
Yeah. But Mina overall, I think, is quite a bit more complex, and there's a bit more to it. And I think they've really thought about kind of how do we want to design our Zelda game? What makes our Zelda game unique? And I give it a lot of credit and respect for that. I don't think there's many Zelda games much like Mina personally.
Right.
And I think I'm just slightly more into Zelda games perhaps than like 2D platformer action. I don't know. Yeah. And you might be the opposite. So, but I would side more with Mina.
Yeah, I think overall, like Shovel Knight at the time, you're right, had the much bigger impact. And I think over time, I have not forgotten Shovel Knight and how much I enjoyed it back then, but I do think that as a studio, Yacht Club has been overtaken in my mind by a lot of other games, a lot of other studios in terms of the indie games that I like. And so Mina, I think, I respect it tremendously. I like it quite a lot. But I think you're right in that it doesn't land with the same impact, and I think it definitely has flaws, it has issues, but I think overall it's a really impressive package. But if we're talking about the grand scheme of where like smaller games are at right now, it doesn't. It's
a completely different world.
Totally different landscape,
era.
You know,
totally different.
You know, when you have Hollow Knight Silksong existing, there's just like a different tier of existence of like how good a game is in this day and age. And it's not to say that Mina's bad. It's not. It's really, really well made. I think it just, it doesn't feel like it innovates or pushes things so much as Shovel Knight did back in the day. Just a different landscape that it exists within. Cool game. I like it.
And I think in that same argument, I think that's why like a 3D Shovel Knight, whatever they do with that, will also be very, very challenging.
Definitely,
like how do you come out in, let's say, 5-6 years and it be impactful with 3D Shovel Knight? I think it's tough.
It's very hard, but I'm sure they'll do it. And they've sold over 500,000 copies, so that's what they said they needed to do to be stable. So I think hopefully that'll be enough to carry them to their next release, and I'm sure Mina will continue to sell. It's done very, very well already, and people seem to be like, I mean, it's the highest reviewed game of the year so far. It's the number one.
That is crazy. Yeah,
that's kind of nuts.
That's very good. Yeah, it's a lock-in, I would say, for like indie nomination, if not outright winner for GOTY.
Potentially. Great. Well, that is going to do us for the first part of the show. Don't go anywhere, because we'll be back after the break to dive into your emails. We'll see you in a bit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's that time again. It's time for emails. Funny story.
What's funny story?
I was preparing emails for today and I was like, we are where have all the 2026 emails gone? Like, normally we star emails in our account, and there was like one email, which we'll get to, that was star for 2026. And I was like, MZ must have gone in and unstarred all the emails from this year. And then you messaged me like, no, I haven't. And then I was like, we've been hacked. Someone has come into our account and unstarred our emails, as hackers do, because that's the number one thing they try to do, obviously. But no, turns out all this hot weather, MBZ, has caused a drought. There is a complete drought of emails. So yeah, if you would like to send an email into the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We also have a channel in our Discord server called Emails. Go and check it out. And as always, we want to flag if it's newsy, if it's current. There's probably a higher chance we'll cover it, because we want to cover what's
because we don't want to be here in 2 years' time and be like, here's a question from someone about a thing that happened 2 years ago.
We'll see. But our first email today is from Chad K. And this was like a little addendum that Chad put from a go-to list from the end of last year, saying, I'd love to hear you debate Nine Souls, brackets, unanimous goatee T and Silksong. I think Silksong has the edge because of better platforming, exploration, and sheer size, but the boss fights in both of these games were incredible.
This is really interesting, because having had time from both of these games, I don't think that I would rank Nine Souls as a Metroidvania. You know, like, there's definitely Metroidvania to Nine Souls. There's exploration, there's a world that you go through, there's platforming, there's people you fight as you explore. This is all true. However, I do not think of that game as a Metroidvania. I think of it as a combat game where I do a bit of exploration, but mostly I'm fighting fucking difficult bosses back to back.
Yeah.
And I think the game reveals itself as that in the back half of it, where it essentially sheds its Metroidvania skin and goes, I wasn't really that anyway. Let's just focus on...
Yeah, it's exactly like Tunic and Zelda. It's like, this is just a Zelda game, but really it's this complex puzzle, mind-bending kind of thing. And the Zelda mechanics maybe float away nearer the end.
They're kind of a means to an end, right? They're like, they exist as a surface element of what this game truly is, but the truth of the matter is, I think Nine Souls is a Metroidvania, really. And, you know, technically it is, but at its core, at its heart, I wouldn't say that is its chief concern, because it truly is about, like, after you fight, I can't remember what her name is, the butterfly lady in the sleep realm area.
She was the hardest boss other than the final boss for me, like, definitely.
Yeah, really, really, really difficult. After that, like, you basically don't do any exploration. You just kind of go from boss fight to boss fight.
Fairly linear, and the time between boss fights is quite small, especially when you're spending like 3-4 hours in many of these boss fights. Like, it becomes a huge portion of the game.
Most of your playtime ends up just being that, just as a... You know, the one before the final boss, I believe, took me 4 hours. It was like maybe 4.5 or something.
Right.
Absolutely insane amount of time to be spending.
That's the one I think I felt better about than you did.
We had different ones that we had trouble with, basically.
But I think all this conversation leads to is, I think Silksong really dominates Nine Souls when it comes to platforming, exploration, size, and this kind of thing. I think the world building of Nine Souls is up there with Silksong. I think both of them just... I know you weren't very invested at all in like the Nine Souls world, but like, it's really dark and interesting. I
think the problem with Nine Souls is it tries to be far too traditional in its storytelling, and I think Silksong is far more... I mean, there's definitely dialogue in Silksong, but it's far more restrained in the way that it tells its story, and it's far more environmental storytelling, and the structure and the design of the world in Silksong is honestly unlike any other 2D game I've ever played. Like, it is unbelievable the way that those places thread together and feel like a cohesive, like, lived space. And I think that kind of story of the world and the way that it is, like, where the enemies are placed and, like, the types of enemies you find, all that sort of stuff, all that sort of storytelling about the world done through gameplay is always going to be preferable to me than, all right, we're down here and we're reading about cats, and there's lots of documents about cats and some muted genetic thing.
I love the Nine Souls story. I could not recount it to you for a second, but I would personally enjoy more going to watch a video on YouTube about Nine Souls' story than Silksong's. I think that's interesting. That's one of the two areas I will say that it's arguably stronger than Silksong. The other one I will say is it marginally pips Silksong, in my view, on that pure boss fight. Like the dance, you could almost call it. Like it's the
right.
And I think
now we should keep in mind that you have not fully finished Silksong.
I've only seen half of the boss fights you've seen of Silksong.
Yes, exactly.
But of the half that I've seen, I'll compare those. And I think what I love about Nine Souls that is so unique is it's got, as we've said before, it's got 3 types of parry, and the way that you execute those 3 different types of parry is glorious. Like the one that there's so much rhythmical parrying of attacks from all these different types of bosses, I think is so unique to any 2D action Metroidvania or any action game or any video game full stop. That is so unique to Nine Souls.
More than any game I've ever played, it forces you to watch what the enemy is doing at all times. Because you have one of the parries is a hold down parry, so you hold the button down to charge it essentially before you can unleash it.
Exactly.
And the timing required on that means that you need to know the exact animation frames when a boss is charging for a move that you can then counter with it.
Exactly.
And so your eyeballs are locked on whatever the enemy is doing, and it just becomes a pure reaction of, what are they doing now? Okay, I need to do this. It's like there's a call and response for everything that happens in a fight. And so it means that you have to learn every single move that a boss does inside out in order to even like keep up with what they're doing.
And I would argue it leans a bit more into that fast-paced dance than Silksong, for the simple reason that I'd argue of the bosses I fought, you have slightly, for most bosses, you have slightly longer windows to heal. I would argue that in Nine Souls, barring a few of the earlier boss fights, there's not really any windows to heal. And if you do want to essentially to heal in Nine Souls, you essentially have to learn a healing window. It's like something that you have trained yourself, like, right, and after this move I know I can heal in that window, and if you don't learn that exact window to heal, you're dead. Like, and I think that's what's so perfect about Nine Souls' combat and its boss fights. Is just like, it's just so precise, so there's no cheesing it at all. I think there's maybe one boss fight I arguably like cheese a tiny bit. I think the one where you're fighting 2 bosses at the same time, I think that's less of a dance, I'd argue, that one, but that's the only fight I'd say out of the boss fights that is sort of, you can cheese a tiny bit. But it's just this one aspect I'd give to Nine Souls, but I think as a game overall, I think Silksong does trump it quite considerably.
Yeah, I think the reason I kind of brought up the Nine Souls is not really a Metroidvania in the beginning is like, I feel like it is quite hard to compare them on a like for like, just because their intentions are quite different. But I think overall, I think they're both remarkable games. I do still side with Silksong overall, just based on the way that it threads everything together. Like, it feels like such a cohesive experience, such a perfectly directed and considered world. And I think also, like, Nine Souls is very well polished, but you can tell the difference between that 7-8 years that has been spent on Silksong versus, you know, a team, you know, working on Nine Souls who has not made a Metroidvania before, who previously had made a horror game and like are trying to do this 2D thing. But you can see where the animations are, you know, a little bit jank in some of the fights, and where, you know, there are areas where the world is not as polished or as well kind of like considered, versus Silksong that just feels like a place that exists.
I mean, I would say you're right in comparison to Silksong, but I think as a standalone game, I do think Nine Souls doesn't look jank and it looks really, really bloody good, but it's
like comparing any 3D platformer to Mario Odyssey, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like,
yeah,
you know, there's really nice looking good ones out there, but like the level of polish and like consideration and sheen that Odyssey has is just like fucking eons beyond most other 3D platformers that exist. So yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, Silksong is just like a level above other video games generally, just because of the amount of craft that has gone into it. Every single thing is so purposeful, and designed. Like, you can just feel every inch of it. It's like everyone complained about the runbacks, right? And I think one of my favorite things about, the runback before the last judge is how you can feel that they know that this runback is long, but they have designed it for you to be able to eventually speed run that run back. And every enemy window that you jump through is designed for you to take 0 damage on the way through that run back, because they have put shortcuts in there. They have put things that with your momentum and your wall jumping, your speed, that you will just dance through it. And they know that you're going to do that so many times because the boss is hard and it's going to challenge you to do so. And as someone like me who loves the feel and the flow of the platforming in Silksong, I was never bothered by it, because I actually enjoyed learning the run back almost as much as I enjoyed learning the boss fights in Silksong. And I think that is testament to just pure craft in the design that is present there. So, Nine Souls, phenomenal game. Absolutely fantastic. But there are some video games that just like transcend everything else. Yeah. And Silksong for me is one of those. It is an all-timer. It is an unbelievable achievement of design. And yeah, it's quite hard to compete when you're at that level. So
I'd be shocked if another 2D action game can ever do parrying to the same degree as Nine Souls. It's so unique, like the 3 different types of parry, as we said, and the way that you learn them, and like many bosses will require you to use all 3 different types of parries at different moments. Like it's very special boss fighting. But yeah, Silksong, very special game. Right. Our next email is from Aaron H, who says, "What are your biggest Nintendo blind spot games, and why haven't you gotten around to playing or finishing them? Think of the most important or highest rated games that you haven't fully sat down and seen all the way through. Could be due to lack of interest, saving it for the right time, waiting on a remake, or just feeling intimidated. For the sake of the question, it doesn't have to be first party, just anything you associate with Nintendo or that debuted on a Nintendo console. Do you hope or plan to get to them eventually, or have you accepted that there'll always be a blind spot for you?" Right. Well,
okay.
Top tips: do a Nintendo podcast for 13 years, and you'll have fewer blind spots. That's a top tip. Yeah, it helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely fewer. We definitely covered a lot of them, over the time that we've been doing the show. To the point where I feel like most of like the obvious classics we have gotten out of the way. But there's definitely a handful still remaining.
I think it's also gone to the point where some of the blind spots I have, there are like very good reasons in some ways related to the show why I've not played them.
Okay,
we can get there.
We can get there. I think the most obvious one for both of us is probably Majora's Mask, right? Like that is like the Zelda,
of which I have played 4 or 5 hours.
Yes, but obviously didn't follow through on, and
so more than a quarter of the way through that game, but didn't.
And I will say, I do think that Majora's Mask is a case of feeling intimidated, because it is the one Zelda game where having a time constraint and having that be a thing I have to worry about, it's just something I don't like in games. Like, we were discussing Unsighted, and Unsighted is a game that has time constraint stuff, but you can actually just turn it off in the menu if you don't want to deal with it. And I think both of us did that, basically, because we were just like, I don't want to do this, basically. And time pressure and having that as a thing, I know it's part of the intended design of Majora's Mask, and it's the way that it's all built, and it's designed perfectly around that. But I do think it is a barrier to entry, and it's a thing that stops me from wanting to start it because I don't want to deal with it, basically.
We should also say we both own the 3DS remade version, which by all accounts is the better version. So like, and there are aspects of that help you with some of the time constraints. And yeah, it's intimidating. And because it's like this big, the only 3D Zelda we've not played, it's kind of leaning more towards like, we should backlog club this game at some point, and I'm sure we will. And I think that playing it with the community, playing at the same time as you, MBZ, having like maybe a checkpoint or two, like I think that will make it feel more manageable, more enjoyable. And hey, for us at least, it'll be very fun going back to the 3DS, which I know you play weekly at this point, MBZ. I've not played mine in quite a while, so yeah.
I dip in and out.
You dip. I think that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely probably the biggest outlier in terms of like mainstream Nintendo stuff that we haven't touched. Is still Majora's Mask, and we have I think it's also just a bit of a fun bit that, like, we promised at the very start of the show, literally in episode 1, one day will rank all the Zeldas, and here we are 13 years later and we still haven't played Majora's Mask, so yeah, it will get done eventually, but like you said, I do think that Backlog Club is probably the way to go, because it forces you to do it, and it gives you a reason to do it, and I don't think we would pick it up of our own accord otherwise, so yeah. We'll probably put that in the poll for the next one whenever we do that. Yeah. So you can make us play it. Bally, what else is on your list?
A game I really want to play, and I think you really want to play, and again, it's gotten to that point where maybe we should both ease off it, and we'll do it as a Backlog Club, and I think the community would very much enjoy us to do this as a Backlog Club. Both games. That is Golden Sun.
Yes.
I think
three games, you mean? There's a DS sequel to Golden Sun as well. There's Golden Sun, there's The Lost Age on GBA, and then there is Dark Dawn, which is the DS Golden Sun game.
But a big blind spot for me before this podcast was like JRPGs, RPGs generally. I was very much a Pokemon kid. That was about it. And the number of RPGs I've played on the show has grown exponentially, and Golden Sun is always talked about amongst Nintendo fans as a real true classic, and it's also now accessible on Nintendo Switch Online, so like, yeah, I want to play it. I've heard very good things, and again, I think this is another nominee for our next poll. It could be Majora's Mask versus Golden Sun.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's only 2 games as those facing off. I think we probably do both eventually, right? And it's a case of which do we do
both of them
first.
Are going to get played. I think we did that with Paper Mario, didn't we? And Mario RPG. Both have been played. Both have been Backlog Club. So
yeah, Mario RPG could have been on this list, but we did tick it off earlier this year. Yeah. So
100%
that was a very good one.
Yeah.
I guess on that thread of thought, Thousand Year Door is obviously a huge part of the Mario RPG canon that most people consider the best of all of the Mario RPG games out there.
And has been remade on Switch. That's on my list as well.
It has. Exactly. And so I think that one is definitely a case of, I'm definitely going to play it. It's not, we kind of were waiting for the remake, and then the remake happened, and so now we don't really have any excuses. So I think, Thousand Year Door is definitely on the list, but I think because we recently played Mario RPG, I'd probably want to wait a little bit before I did dive back into another one of those. And give it a couple of years maybe before we try out Thousand Year Door. That's also on the line for me.
I would be as bold as to say that all the other blank spots for me are not my taste, or I would perceive them to not be my taste, or I've tried a bit of that series and I don't want to play this anymore, like a Fire Emblem or a Xenoblade, and I could be wrong with those opinions. I need to, I do need to still try things. Series evolve and change. It's not just like a series is done and dusted forever, but I'd say other than that, I don't personally have blind spots where I'm like, I really need to play that. I think series like Yoshi and Kirby are good examples of, we'll dip in when it's good. Like there's a lot of series where it's like they got to be good because Nintendo churn out these games, and we can't. I'm not there to play every one of those.
I don't need to play Yoshi's Crafted World, right? Like it exists, and I haven't played it, so technically you could say it's a blind spot. But is Yoshi's Crafted World really a blind spot? I don't know. I feel like when we talk about blind spots, I think we're talking about like the canon, right? Like the games that are considered very important that you should have played, that are everyone says are like kind of the best ones out there. And I do think that we've covered a lot of those bases. Like, I've even played some F-Zero stuff that I usually am not that into. I've played F-Zero X on N64 a bunch. Is my go-to like emulation testing game. And I've not played it all the way through or anything, but I have experience with that game. I know how it plays, all that sort of stuff. There's obviously like older Star Fox games. Matt came on the show talking about his experience of going through all of those. I wouldn't call Star Fox Assault or Command or Adventures as like part of the canon that needs to be gotten to. You might consider them that, but like they are blind spots for me, but I don't know if I would consider them things that I would have to go after necessarily. And then you get into the more niche stuff where like for me they actually are blind spots because I kind of want to play them at some point. Stuff like Another Code, which they did the remake of on Switch, the DS game, or Hotel Dusk, like those DS kind of adventure games that I was quite interested in back in the day and never got around to, or even Endless Ocean on Wii, right? Like stuff like that that's a bit more weird, I don't know, fucking Ella bits, right? I think I have that on Wii as well. Like those weird, like experimental Nintendo games of that era, I definitely would like to go back to. But again, would you consider those blind spots? I don't know. It kind of depends on your definition, really. I think Chibi Robo is probably another one, which we have discussed in the past as well, as a series that neither of us have ever checked out before.
We were about to play Chibi Robo, and then something happened, and I can't remember what it was. Was it? I think it was Silksong. Silksong killed Chibi Robo.
Yeah. Chibi Robo, another one we could add to the Backlog Club list. I think that tends to be the case. I think that's why we have slowed down in our like jumping on old Nintendo games as much in recent eras, and part of that was driven by we have this Backlog Club thing that we're going to bring back at some point, and it would be good to have some of those to do as part of it. So I do think that is a reason why some of these have kind of been left on the cutting room floor, is that we would like to kind of go long form on them and kind of discuss them a bit more in depth. So yeah, I think that's probably a big one. There's obviously a lot of NES games that we don't really go back to because we just find NES as a hard platform. Yeah, like Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think I don't have to play those video games to know my opinion on them.
We talked about, like, we could play those together, rotating the controller between us with save states and maybe a guide, and we just blast our way through it and just kind of, and then talk about it on the show. We can be like, we have played Zelda 1. We felt it was important. Did we have an amazing time? No, but it was fun to hang out with each other, and
right, yeah,
like,
exactly.
We can maybe do that at some point, but the idea of both of us going away independently, playing Zelda 1, it's just a bit daunting and not the most fun, to be honest. But
exactly. I think like N64 stuff as well feels like a bit more of a blind spot for me personally. I think things like Perfect Dark and GoldenEye are obviously big ones of the era. Actually, probably the biggest one of that era.
Did you not play GoldenEye at my house? I had GoldenEye.
Yeah, but we'd never really played it that much, I guess.
Yeah, we
didn't go down that.
People bloody loved GoldenEye's multiplayer, and I owned GoldenEye and just was never that into it. I was always more into like the Mario Kart and Mario Tennis.
And I think those games ultimately don't hold up that well because the controls and the frame rate and all this sort of stuff is not the best. I think GoldenEye is like a probably one of the biggest examples.
Who was playing GoldenEye on Giant Bomb? I think it was Mike.
I mean, Dan did a whole series of it.
Dan loves it, and then Mike Minardi played it, and Mike's like, no, it's not that good. And Dan's like,
not that
big defender of Gold.
Yeah. I think Perfect Dark maybe holds up a little bit better, but both of them are challenges. I think the most obvious one is Banjo-Kazooie, right? Like, neither of us have played Banjo-Kazooie, and I think that's probably one that we should play at some point in time. So I think both those games, Tooie and Kazooie, are both big blind spots for me.
Yes, definitely. That's so due a remake, but we'll see. I also own like Jet Force Gemini, and I only played that in fits and starts when I was, 12 or whatever. Like, I think people say a lot of good stuff and bad stuff about that game, but it's kind of an interesting, it's a third-person shooter, like, on N64. That's wild. So, yeah, I do want to try that maybe some point.
For sure. I'd say of modern series, the biggest blind spot for both of us is probably Tomodachi Life, because we've not really touched that stuff at all, and have not. I mean, I'm kind of curious about it, but not curious enough to like jump in and play it and kind of figure out what people like about it.
Sounds like it's a quick laugh, and then the longevity just is very dependent on how much you find that one style funny, I guess.
And I think it comes down to like, you know, you've always talked about like playing games to finish games, and like I think Tomodachi Life is a brand of game that is more like, you know, The Sims, where it's about the simulation, it's about just playing it for the fun of playing it and just seeing what happens in interactions. And it sounds like for kids it's like very good because it's like endlessly like creating and doing stuff and making Miis that look silly and like having them interact with each other. And I think there's especially with the reviews for the new one, it sounds like there's a point past which it becomes quite repetitive, and you know, you see similar things happen again and again, and that's where you kind of like maybe lose the surprise factor of it to some degree. So yeah, I definitely think that's one that I would like to check out at some point in time, but is I'm not like angling to to play it. Really,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's on the list, but I don't have intention, I guess, of going back to it. So yeah.
But yeah, I think we cover a lot between us, and
most series. I think like we've played the big games in pretty much everything, and there's definitely some blind spots there, but we've covered the majority of them.
The two series I probably owe it to you to go back to at some point when the time is right and the game is right are Xenoblade and Fire Emblem.
The thing is with Fire Emblem is it feels like you actually like the older games more than the newer ones.
I do and did.
So it's probably worth you going back to older Fire Emblems than it is trying new ones.
I don't think... Yeah, I agree, but I don't think I was really mentally ready for Three Houses being as, like, chatty and relationshipy and school persona-y as
just the calendar stuff.
Calendar stuff. Like, I don't think I was ready for that, and if I went into a game like that with the knowledge that it's going to be like that, I might come out of it better.
Right. And I don't know if Fortune's Weave is going to have that stuff at all, or if it's going to be slightly different, because they haven't really talked about that element yet. I'm sure we'll find out soon, but I'm very curious to see kind of what direction they go in with that game.
I've said before in the show, but I think in many ways I played Xenoblade at the wrong time, and what I mean by that is I don't think my knowledge
also the wrong platform, frankly.
It held up fine on 3DS. It's obviously better on Wii, but like
it's just like the scale and the scope of that game is so much better on a big screen, and I think that takes away from it somewhat.
But my main issue was I just wasn't well versed with RPG mechanics and like building a team, what works well on something else. And Xenoblade 1, having played more RPGs, like I think I would, if I went into something like that fresh, I'd have a lot better base knowledge of how systems work together, and I think I would be able to relax more about systems and equipment and just enjoy the story more. And as great as the story is in that game, I was just really struggling with the mechanics by the end and the difficulty spikes, and it was pretty rough at points for me.
It also didn't have difficulty options like the remake now does, because the new version on Switch has an easy mode, which I actually ended up using because like the end of Xenoblade is actually it's a deliberate difficulty spike, and it has like a level curve to it. And when I replayed Xenoblade 1 on Switch, I got to the end and I just swapped to easy for the last boss fight because I was like, well, I'd have to grind another 10 levels. I'd rather not do that, so I'm just going to do this instead. I will always be up for attempting those games on normal, and then I would appreciate the option of dropping it down if I get to a really tough boss, and so I am open to playing like 2 and 3. You think I should skip 2 and just go to 3, but we'll see. Look, 2 has a lot of problems, many different problems, but I think overall, I think probably just wait and see what Genesis is like.
Yeah,
I think
I'm very interested in that.
That makes the most sense. So we'll see.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's
all good. Right.
Next email. Thank you for your email.
Dave 97 from Discord. What do you think the plan for Mario Kart World is? The lack of any updates in the recent direct following the game's first anniversary was shocking. I don't know, Dave.
It is baffling, isn't it? It is. Mario Kart World, is it the most disappointing Nintendo game ever made? I would say yes, actually. Yeah. Like, I have not thought about Mario Kart World a single time since it came out. It's a video game that I know exists, but like, who gives a fuck about it anymore? Nobody. Like, is anyone playing Mario Kart World today?
Yeah, I stand by that the design of the world is really good, and they've just done the wrong things with the world. Like, I think the need to drive between the points is not interesting enough, and I think that the lack of a mission mode that utilizes aspects of the world in interesting ways is also a huge drop ball. It's weird. I actually checked online. I was like, right, Mario Kart 8 Wii U, when it came out in May 2014. Do you know when the first pack of DLC that included like the Zelda track and all that came out?
I'm going to say like February of 2015.
It was November 2014, the same year.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're judging precedent on more than a decade ago, but that's when the last Mario Kart game was, so it's not my fault. I have absolutely no idea what they're doing or plan to do, and I'd imagine that there's a good chance they'll do something a bit like Animal Crossing, where they do a big old update, and that's it. And then they move on with the world, or I don't know how. Just trying to get in the brain of NCL and what they think about how Mario Kart World is doing is very difficult. I don't know whether they are in the they're probably on the fence of saying, do we support this thing with loads of DLC like we have been planning but don't want to reveal yet, or do we pivot and say, right, we are going to make a more traditional Mario Kart in, let's say, I don't know, 2028, 2029, and then they just go back to tracks and no open worlds, and it's a lot more vanilla.
I think like their entire thing is like one Mario Kart per generation, right? Like that's kind of generally what happens. Obviously with 8 it was a totally weird situation because the Wii U failed and they needed something for Switch quickly, and yeah, that was the whole thing, that they had to kind of do something different there. But
so you are very convinced there is not a new Mario Kart coming to the Switch 2 in the entire Switch 2's life cycle?
Yes, 100%. Like, this is not how they operate. And I think my suspicion, and I hope this is true, I don't think it is true because Nintendo would have to be smart to do this. My hope is that they are just revamping Mario Kart World and redesigning it from the ground up to be like, okay, we made it good now, and you're going to like it now, and we're not going to do like going between courses. And
because you could insert that mission mode. Yeah, you could stop people driving between courses. They've got the.
It is fixable. This game is fixable.
I totally agree, because the structure is there. It is a cool world. They just need to do the right thing.
The world exists.
With it. Yeah,
they need to put stuff in the world, and they need to structure it properly. And it's so easy to just like change the way that races work and just get rid of this stupid shit of driving between them. Just make it so you do 3 tracks back to back. Like, it's so obviously game development very difficult. These are not hard design changes to make. I feel like I think it is a thing that we can say on a podcast and they can say, I understand what that is and I can do it, you know? Like I hope that there is something happening behind the scenes with Mario Kart World, because it is odd that they've been this quiet for this long for a new fucking Mario Kart game that launched with the system. And we've had nothing, not even the fucking DK and Pauline skins, of which there were only one of each at the launch. And we were like, oh, that makes sense, because when Donkey Kong Bonanza comes out, then they're obviously going to add skins. It came out a month after Mario Kart, and we're over a year later and nothing. It is like, this is fucking crazy.
I think, on the bright side, I think when they do update this game, it's going to be big. And they want to do it all together. And they want to make the biggest shebang possible, right? Like... And beyond that, I think they might do even more DLC, like they obviously did with Mario Kart 8. Years later, they did more and more tracks. Like, if, as you say, this is their generational Mario Kart, then obviously it's going to get updates. It's just about where and when. And it feels like the gap for this first update must be just because of the quantity of stuff they want to do. It would be
potentially, yeah. Like, if this is a proper like Mario Kart World 2.0 type of update where it just changes a bunch of stuff and adds a bunch of things, then that would be great. You know, you could redeem a game that I think is very redeemable. Like, it has the bones. Like, the game is really, like, it looks fucking amazing. Like, playing this game handheld, it's one of the most impressive things visually that exists on Switch 2 currently. Like, sounds fantastic. The soundtrack is awesome. Yeah. So good. So there's so many elements that are salvageable here. It's just that the core of it fucking sucks right now. And like, I'm really interested to see like, what are the player numbers for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe versus Mario Kart World right now? Because I'm willing to bet there are more people playing online in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at this very moment than there are Mario Kart World. Just based on the community and the way they've reacted to World, and the fact that like people do not like a lot of the decisions Nintendo has made. I would not be surprised. And if that is the case, then I think that is a bit of a wake-up call for Nintendo, because they can see on the back end how many people are playing each of these games. And if they see people going back and playing 8 Deluxe instead of World, they know something is wrong, and I think they have to change it. And yeah, fingers crossed that is going to be the outcome.
You're saying we're not going to get Mario Kart Double Dash to the Switch Online service anytime soon?
Unfortunately, no, because Nintendo would see that as a distraction from, Mario Kart World. Yeah. So can't have that be the case, unfortunately. So,
but yeah, good question, Dave. That is all the emails we've got for today. But as I said at the top of the segment, we have a huge drought. So please send an email into the show. The email address is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. And we have a channel in our Discord server, and that channel is called Emails. You can also post there.
Yes, please do. And that, everybody, is going to be the podcast for this episode. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Obviously, you can find us in various places. And if you like the show, you can support it by going to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where, Bally, we would like to thank some of our supporters.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Sullivan C, Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK Alan, Orange Thunder, Nintendo Man, Turtle, and Dancer. Thank you all for your $10 tier plus support, but also a huge thank you to all of our other patrons for all the support you give the show.
Absolutely. You can obviously find us in various places across the web. I am on Blue Sky at NBZ. Where are you, Bally?
I'm on Blue Sky at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
And you can also follow the podcast over there at TNL Podcast for updates about the show. Also has links to our YouTube channel and to our Discord. And, of course, you can, as mentioned before, put emails in Discord. But also there's a bunch of people chatting in there, talking about stuff. Yeah, it'll be a good time. So go ahead and check that out.
Are you feeling that, MBZ?
Am I feeling what?
Are you feeling that happening? Rhythm? Can you just feel the rhythm?
The beat in the background.
It's coming.
It's coming down the line. Yeah, Rhythm Heaven Groove comes out next week, which means next episode, baby, get ready. We're talking about Game of the Year 2026, yes. Rhythm Heaven Groove. Let's fucking go. I'm so excited. I do have one colleague at work who was like, it's coming. Rhythm Heaven Groove is coming. I was like, yeah, man, it's coming. We're so excited. Rhythm Heaven Groove. Yeah, I was having a chat at the office. I was like, Rhythm Heaven is such a good video game that you don't even need to look at it. You can close your eyes and play it. You know, that's how good Rhythm Heaven is. They could release Rhythm Heaven as like an audio only experience, and people would still love it. It's so good, you know. So it's a great time. Very much look forward to seeing how that is. I did, as I mentioned last time, watch the Nintendo Treehouse stuff on one of those modes, and I hope that mode is like deep and has like a lot of stuff to it, because it feels like it could go to some really cool places if they kind of like up the challenge level. Exactly. Yeah. I could be very excited about how that is. So yeah, that's coming. Also, I don't know, I've been hearing some decent stuff about Star Fox. I might have to check that out. So yeah, definitely interested.
The next one I might pick up on Switch 2 that's coming this month is probably something like a Dench Attack. I'm interested how that does. And then obviously Splatoon Raiders is 23rd of July, so I think I'm most interested in that. Yeah,
I think there's definitely a lot of stuff coming, so we'll be here to chat about it all and cover it for you. But
how much is Star Fox in British pounds?
I think it's about 40 quid.
40?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Rhythm Heaven's 30, Star Fox is 40. Yeah. They're doing some various pricing over here the moment, which is it's nice. It's good. It means we're not fully locked into fucking $80 GTA 6. So yeah, that's it's gonna be a whole thing. But we are on Nintendo over here, so we don't have to worry about any of that nonsense.
We just want that Ocarina of Time remake date. That's what we want.
Exactly.
It's coming.
So we'll see what happens. But until then, thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time talking about some more video games and Nintendo. Until then, goodbye. The musical interlude used on today's show was Outlands, Age of Magic, from the Adventures of Elliot to the Millennium Tales, copyright Square Enix 2026.